I'll never forget that electrifying moment, the first 100 words that changed everything. In a searing flash of disbelief, my wife sneered, "You're a loser, with no job to your name." Her mocking laughter echoed around me as if my worth were nothing but a punchline. The venom in her voice cut through every hope I had built over the years. That moment, laden with contempt and scorn, ignited a fire inside me, a burning resolve to reclaim my dignity and prove that I was so much more than her ridicule. In that instant, I knew I would no longer tolerate being belittled by the person I once trusted with my heart and our life. I had always believed that love was supposed to uplift you, to inspire you to reach new heights together. For years, I had struggled with job instability while pouring every ounce of energy into growing my small company, a venture I nurtured despite countless setbacks and sleepless nights. My wife's constant jabs about my employment status had become a dull, recurring refrain that I had tried desperately to ignore. I told myself it was temporary, that someday I would prove my worth. But then came the day when her mockery became the final straw. It was a typical Monday morning at the office, and I was preparing for a major client presentation when I received a text from her. It was terse and dripping with sarcasm. "How's the unemployment line treating you today, honey?" My heart sank as I stared at the screen. The words weren't just a tease, they were a blatant dismissal of my struggle, a public declaration that I was inadequate. I'd sacrificed so much, investing time, money, and relentless energy into building a company from nothing, only to have my efforts mocked by the one person I'd expected to be my partner in success. That moment of humiliation was like a spark on dry tinder. My emotions, which had long been simmering beneath the surface, erupted in a furious blaze. I felt a cocktail of shame, anger, and deep betrayal surge through me. I realized that my self-worth could no longer be dictated by her snide remarks. In a haze of adrenaline, I decided that enough was enough. I began to meticulously analyze every conversation, every dismissive gesture over the years that I'd brushed aside as mere teasing. In retrospect, there were so many moments when I'd felt a pang of doubt about my abilities, when her offhand comments had chipped away at my confidence. The realization that I had allowed myself to be defined by her opinion was a bitter pill to swallow. I knew that if I wanted to reclaim my dignity, I had to take drastic, uncompromising action. Over the following week, I immersed myself in my work like never before. I pored over financial reports, re-examined the company's strategic plans, and sought advice from trusted advisors who had always believed in my vision. Every meeting, every late-night conference call, fueled the growing determination inside me. I began drafting a new, radical business plan, a blueprint for transforming my company into a powerhouse of innovation and success. This plan was not just a way to prove my worth in the marketplace, it was a declaration that I would no longer let her mockery, her disdain, or her betrayal undermine everything I had built. In that week of furious work, a plan emerged that was as bold as it was unconventional. I would take control of my own destiny by firing her, and the clique of her friends who had insinuated themselves into every facet of my company. They had been lurking in the background for far too long, their influence a constant reminder of her disregard for my efforts. Their presence, combined with her constant ridicule, had poisoned the workplace, making every decision and every success feel undermined. I realized that to rebuild my business and my self-respect, I had to clean house, removing not only the toxic influence of my wife but also the sycophantic support of her friends who had cheered on her every derisive comment. I began planning the purge quietly and methodically. I reviewed personnel files, evaluated performance records, and identified those whose loyalty was clearly skewed toward supporting her rather than the vision of the company I had dedicated myself to building. Each conversation with long-standing employees revealed layers of discomfort and disillusionment with the way things had been handled behind closed doors. It was a painful revelation. The workplace, once a sanctuary for innovation and hard work, had become a stage for petty power plays and personal vendettas. As the plan took shape, I felt a mixture of vindication and profound sorrow. I knew that firing her and her friends would irreparably alter our personal and professional relationship, but I also understood that it was the only path forward if I was to rebuild our company on my own terms. Every sleepless night spent drafting memos and making discreet calls to key personnel was fueled by a desire not only for revenge but for redemption, a chance to prove to myself that I was not defined by her insults, but by my resilience and vision. That fateful day, when I finally executed the plan, felt both liberating and heart-wrenching. In a series of carefully coordinated meetings, I informed each person of the decision with a calm professionalism that belied the storm raging inside me. I watched as the news rippled through the company, a wave of shock, whispers, and a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The final act of firing her and those close to her was not an impulsive burst of anger. It was a calculated step in reclaiming my life and my business, a bold move to assert that my worth could no longer be measured by anyone else's scorn. In that decisive moment, as I sent off the final emails and finalized the paperwork, I felt a strange mixture of relief and loss. I knew that the fallout from these actions would be immense, that friendships would be severed and the family I once knew might never be the same. But deep inside, I also felt a burgeoning sense of self-respect, a recognition that I had taken a stand for everything I believed in. I was determined to forge a new future, one where my hard work, dedication, and innovative ideas would be the sole measures of my worth. As I locked up the office for the last time that day, I walked out into the cool evening air with a heavy heart but an unbreakable resolve. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, legal battles, public scrutiny, and the inevitable confrontation with my estranged wife. Yet, I was ready to face it all. I had shed the weight of her mockery, of her dismissive words that had haunted me for years, and in their place, I had planted the seeds of a new legacy, one built on the foundation of my own vision and unyielding determination. Every step I took away from that chapter felt like a step toward reclaiming my identity. I knew that my son's future, and my own, depended on my ability to stand tall in the face of adversity. I would rebuild the company, restore its reputation, and prove to the world, and to myself, that I was far from worthless. I was a man driven by passion, resilience, and the unshakable belief that every setback was merely a setup for a monumental comeback. Now, as I face the horizon of an uncertain but hopeful future, I carry with me the lessons of my journey, a reminder that the harshest words and the deepest betrayals can sometimes serve as the catalyst for our most profound transformations. I am ready to confront whatever comes next, to navigate the turbulent waters of personal and professional reinvention, and to write a new chapter of my life defined not by mockery and rejection, but by strength, innovation, and the unwavering pursuit of my own worth. After that moment when her mocking words echoed in the boardroom corridors, I plunged headlong into a whirlwind of self-reflection and calculated planning, a period when my heart was both shattered and steeled by a burning resolve to reclaim everything that had been so callously dismissed. In the days that followed, I oscillated between sleepless nights and manic bursts of productivity. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her sneer, "You're jobless, you're useless," a cruel refrain that gnawed at me. I was determined, though, not to allow that bitterness to define my future. Instead, I turned that raw, seething anger into a blueprint for rebellion, a secret plan to take back control of my company and, with it, my self-worth. I began by isolating myself in a cramped, dimly lit study in my apartment, a place that, for weeks, became my war room. Stacks of financial reports, employee performance reviews, and the company's outdated policies were spread out before me like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, each one revealing the flaws and stagnation that had been festering under my father's rule. I dove deep into every corner of our operations, determined to understand how a company I had nurtured from its early days had been allowed to languish. Every statistic was a painful reminder of my wife's derision, but also an opportunity, a chance to prove that my vision was not only viable, but necessary. Late into the night, as the hum of the city filtered through my window, I meticulously began to draft a new strategic plan. My fingers flew over the keyboard as I typed out ideas for modernizing our business practices, restructuring management, updating our technology, and cutting out those inefficiencies that had plagued us for years. It was as if every line of code, every financial projection, was a personal retort to every jeer that had once reduced me to nothing. I realized that this wasn't just about proving my professional worth, it was about taking a stand for myself in the face of relentless ridicule. During these long hours of solitary planning, I began to reach out covertly to trusted allies within the company. There were a few individuals, long overlooked under my father's regime, who had quietly harbored their own frustrations about the outdated, stagnant way of doing things. Over whispered phone calls in back rooms and discreet meetings in quiet cafes, we began to share our ideas. I found that the very people who had once worked in the shadows, resigned to the status quo, were suddenly eager for change. Their support was a salve to my wounded pride, reinforcing the conviction that my strategy could turn the tide. One evening, after a particularly intense meeting with a small group of loyal employees, I felt a rare surge of optimism. We discussed how the new plan could not only rescue our company from its slow decline but transform it into a dynamic, forward-thinking enterprise. Every suggestion, every challenge we identified, was met with a nod or a murmured agreement. In that moment, it struck me, my wife's constant mockery wasn't merely a personal insult, it was a symptom of a larger, systemic failure, a failure that had left our company bleeding internally. I began to see that her derision was part of a broader pattern of neglect and indifference, not just toward me, but toward the future of the company itself. As I continued to refine my plan, I also had to face the personal cost of this decision. I remembered the days when I'd been humiliated by her offhand remarks, the nights I'd felt utterly small and insignificant. The thought of firing her and her friends, those who had infiltrated every corner of my professional world with their sycophantic support, was both exhilarating and heart-wrenching. I knew that this move would shatter not only my marriage but the delicate balance of our family and professional relationships. Yet, every time I looked at the meticulously prepared financial forecasts and innovative proposals, I felt a sense of justice forming, a belief that I could finally prove my worth by taking back control. Amid the chaos of my planning sessions, I sought refuge in small, grounding rituals. Each morning, I would rise before dawn, take a long walk through the quiet, empty streets, and let the cool air clear my mind. In these solitary moments, I revisited memories of past hardships and the countless sacrifices I'd made. I recalled the long nights at the office, the moments when I sacrificed personal time and happiness to secure the company's future, and I vowed that my efforts would not be in vain. The more I reflected, the more I recognized that my wife's derision was not an indictment of my abilities but a challenge, a dare to rise, to innovate, and to prove that I was more than the sum of their shallow judgments. I also began to document every step of my secret mission in a new, leather-bound journal, each entry a chronicle of my journey from humiliation to determination. I wrote about the minutiae of my strategy, the sleepless nights spent refining projections, and the clandestine meetings that slowly built a network of like-minded allies within the company. The pages overflowed with a mix of technical details and raw emotion, a blend of business acumen and the unmistakable fire of personal redemption. By the time the plan was nearly complete, I had assembled a comprehensive dossier that laid bare every inefficiency and outdated practice that was crippling our company. The document wasn't just a business plan, it was a manifesto of transformation, a declaration that the legacy my father had built was no longer acceptable in a modern world. I was ready to present this proposal to the board, to challenge the status quo and prove that my vision was not just viable, but essential. Each statistic and projection was a battle cry against the dismissive voices that had once told me I was worthless. Yet, in the midst of this strategic planning, I couldn't escape the personal turmoil that still simmered beneath the surface. I often found myself haunted by memories of that fateful day, my wife's mocking laughter, the cold dismissiveness in her eyes, and the gut-wrenching look on our son's face as he whispered his innocent question. Those images were a constant reminder of the betrayal I had endured. I would lie awake at night, the darkness of my room echoing with the weight of my sorrow, and wonder if the price of reclaiming my worth would be too high. But then, in those darkest hours, I also felt a spark of defiance, a stubborn refusal to let those painful moments define my future. In therapy sessions with Dr. Collins, a pragmatic yet empathetic counselor, I began to reconcile the dual aspects of my journey, the professional drive to revitalize our company and the personal need to heal from deep betrayal. Revenge, Dr. Collins once told me, is not about destroying the person who hurt you, it's about reclaiming your power and proving to yourself that you are worth more than their shallow judgments. Her words resonated deeply, and I started to view my strategic planning not as an act of spite, but as a necessary step in redefining my own identity and proving that I was capable of leading, innovating, and succeeding, regardless of what anyone else said. In the meantime, I continued to work discreetly, holding clandestine meetings with key members of my team and refining every aspect of my proposal. We ran simulations, discussed market trends, and mapped out a vision for a company that would be agile, innovative, and unburdened by outdated traditions. The collaborative energy in those meetings was electric, a stark contrast to the stifled environment we had endured under my father's regime. Slowly, the seeds of change began to sprout among us, a shared belief that we could transform the company and, in doing so, forge a new future where our contributions were recognized and valued. I recall one particularly intense evening when I was poring over the final numbers in my home office. The soft glow of the computer screen illuminated stacks of reports and financial charts as I meticulously recalculated projections. The pressure was immense, the stakes sky-high, yet with every recalculation, I felt a surge of empowerment. This wasn't just a bid for corporate control, it was my declaration that I was more than the sum of their insults. I had a vision, a purpose, and a plan that could revolutionize the very industry we were a part of. Yet, even as I prepared to step into the boardroom with my proposal, I couldn't shake the lingering ache of personal betrayal. The thought of firing my wife and her friends, those who had infiltrated our company with their sycophantic behavior, was a reminder of how deeply my life had been intertwined with pain. Every decision, every cut in the fabric of our relationships, weighed heavily on me. I often wondered if, in my quest for vindication, I was losing sight of what truly mattered: my integrity, my ability to forgive, and the values I'd long held dear. The internal battle was fierce. On one hand, a desire for retribution burned brightly. On the other, a quiet, steady voice urged me to rebuild not just for myself, but for the future of the company and the people who depended on it. In those tumultuous moments, I found solace in the unwavering support of a few trusted colleagues who had seen my struggles firsthand. Their belief in my vision and their quiet reassurances bolstered my resolve. "You're the only one who can turn this ship around," one of them said during a late-night strategy session, his tone firm yet encouraging. Their words reminded me that I wasn't alone, that there was a team behind me, ready to embrace a new era of innovation and transformation. Every discussion, every shared idea, fueled my determination to prove that my worth wasn't defined by my father's dismissals but by my ability to lead, inspire, and innovate. As I reached the final stages of my planning, the tension within me transformed into a simmering anticipation, a readiness to face the ultimate challenge. I knew that presenting my proposal to the board would be a defining moment, one that would either cement my position as a visionary leader or plunge me further into obscurity. The idea of stepping into that room, of standing before a panel of executives and defending every line of my meticulously crafted plan, filled me with both dread and a fierce, unyielding hope. It was the culmination of years of sacrifice, of every sleepless night and every whispered doubt, and it was my chance to claim the respect I had long been denied. In the final hours before the meeting, I retreated to a quiet place, a small, secluded park bench beneath a canopy of ancient trees. There, in the gentle rustling of leaves and the soft murmur of a distant stream, I allowed myself to breathe deeply, to let go of some of the pain, and to focus on the vision I had so painstakingly built. I thought of every moment when I'd been told I was worthless, and I let that thought transform into a promise to myself: I would rise above it all. I would build a future defined by my own terms, one where my contributions were valued, my ideas celebrated, and my self-worth unassailable. And so, as I prepared to step into the boardroom and present my revolutionary proposal, a plan that would not only modernize our company but also serve as a testament to my own resilience, I felt a quiet determination envelop me. I was no longer the man who had been diminished by the shallow judgments of my past. I was a visionary, a leader ready to reclaim my identity and forge a new legacy out of the very ashes of betrayal. Every piece of evidence, every carefully calculated figure, every whispered word of encouragement from those who believed in me, had led to this moment. With a heart still heavy with loss but fortified by an unbreakable resolve, I knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But I was ready. I was ready to face the board, to stand tall in the face of my father's dismissive legacy, and to prove, once and for all, that my worth was measured not by others' scorn, but by the power of my vision and the strength of my spirit. I woke in the dim light of dawn on a day that felt both endless and infinitesimally brief, a day that would forever be etched into my memory. The funeral had been over for hours, but the raw sting of loss still throbbed through my body like an open wound. I sat alone in a small, barren room at a local motel, my mind drifting between the muted sounds of the early morning and the clamor of my inner turmoil. I couldn't shake the image of my 5-year-old son's lifeless face, nor the echo of his fragile, heart-wrenching question: "Daddy, why did Mommy do that?" That tiny voice, filled with innocent confusion, reverberated in my heart, urging me to search for meaning amid the darkness. In the silence of that cold morning, I found myself reflecting on everything that had led to this devastating moment. My wife's choice to abandon me and our son, a choice that saw her whisked away to a sunlit paradise in Hawaii with her lover, had severed the ties of our family in a way I never imagined possible. The betrayal wasn't sudden, it had been brewing for years beneath the surface, hidden behind forced smiles and half-truths. But on that day, as I stood before the grave of the little boy who had been the center of my world, the truth became unbearable. I had lost not only my son but also the promise of a life we once planned together, a future where every sacrifice, every sleepless night, was meant to secure his dreams. Instead, that future was stolen by callous indifference and betrayal. In the hours following the service, I wandered the hospital corridors in a daze, my thoughts a tumultuous blend of grief, rage, and a piercing sense of abandonment. I recalled the countless nights I'd stayed up, meticulously saving every spare penny, working overtime in hopes of securing his college fund, a fund that represented the dreams I had for him. Now, all that hope was reduced to ashes by my wife's reckless actions. The contrast was brutal. While she basked in the carefree luxury of a Hawaiian beach, I was left to confront the unbearable emptiness of loss and the harsh judgment of a family that had turned its back on me. That night, as I finally returned to my cramped motel room, the weight of my grief was nearly too much to bear. I sat at the edge of the narrow bed, clutching a crumpled photograph of my son, his smile radiant and pure, a stark reminder of the joy that once filled our lives. In the quiet darkness, I made a vow: I would not allow this betrayal to break me completely. I promised myself that, despite the overwhelming pain, I would forge a new future, a future built on the strength of my own resilience, where my son's memory would be honored through every step I took toward healing and redemption. The days that followed were a slow, agonizing journey through the labyrinth of loss. I sought refuge in the solitude of a small apartment I rented not far from the city center, a temporary haven where I could begin the arduous process of rebuilding. The space was stark, its walls bare and its silence oppressive, yet it represented a chance to start anew, to reclaim the life I had once known. I filled that space gradually with pieces of myself, a few cherished photographs, a worn-out journal, and mementos of happier times. Every object was a reminder of both what I had lost and what I hoped to rebuild. During those early weeks, I dedicated long hours to introspection. I spent nights writing feverishly in my journal, letting my emotions spill onto the pages without censorship. I wrote about the anguish of being abandoned, the deep-seated anger at the woman I once loved, and the desperate need to understand why my sacrifices had meant so little. With each tear-stained entry, I began to unearth a truth I had long buried, that my worth was not defined by someone else's shallow judgments, but by my own capacity to love and to endure. I realized that I could not change the past, but I could shape the future by embracing the lessons learned from it. In parallel with my emotional healing, I knew I had to secure a future for my son, a future that would shine with the promise of education, hope, and the realization of dreams, no matter how far-fetched they might seem now. I reached out to financial advisors and legal experts, determined to salvage whatever remained of the savings I had painstakingly built for his college fund. Every consultation, every painstaking review of bank statements, was a painful reminder of the betrayal, yet it also lit a spark of possibility. Though the numbers were disheartening, I began to develop a new plan, a strategy to rebuild his future piece by piece. I set up meetings to explore scholarship programs, launched small crowdfunding initiatives, and even considered part-time work that could contribute directly to his fund. Every small deposit, every newfound financial strategy, was a step toward reclaiming the dreams that had been stolen from us. At work, I plunged myself into my professional responsibilities with a vigor born of necessity. The company I had helped build, once a labor of love and a symbol of our shared aspirations, had now become a battleground for proving my worth. Every project I undertook, every late-night conference call, was an act of defiance against the memory of my wife's mockery and the sting of betrayal. I began to innovate in ways I hadn't dared before, pushing boundaries and taking risks that reinvigorated my sense of purpose. My colleagues noticed a change in me, a quiet, steely determination that transformed my frustration into creative energy. I sought new opportunities to lead projects that aligned with my vision of progress, and with each success, I felt a small measure of vindication. I wasn't defined by their scorn, I was defined by my ability to rise, to create, and to inspire. Amid these professional endeavors, I also reconnected with old friends, those who had been a constant source of support before the betrayal. Their empathetic words and shared experiences of similar heartbreak provided a network of understanding that was both healing and empowering. Late-night conversations over coffee, spontaneous weekend outings, and heartfelt letters exchanged between kindred souls helped fill the void left by my estranged wife. Through these connections, I realized that I wasn't alone in my struggle. Others had faced similar trials, and many had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more determined to build lives that were defined not by external validation but by inner strength. One evening, as the chill of winter slowly gave way to the first hints of spring, I attended a support group for parents who had experienced profound loss and betrayal. In that circle, I listened to stories of shattered dreams and quiet resilience, each narrative a mirror reflecting my own struggles. The collective wisdom of the group, combined with the shared sense of hope, provided me with a powerful reminder: while pain may never fully disappear, it can serve as a catalyst for transformation. A man in the group summed it up perfectly when he said, "Our scars are not marks of defeat, they are emblems of survival, proof that we have fought and, against all odds, we continue to live." Those words resonated deeply within me, and for the first time in months, I felt a tentative sense of peace. With the support of my therapist, friends, and newfound community, I began to set clear, non-negotiable boundaries with those who had once held sway over my life. I made the difficult decision to cut ties with my wife and her circle, a choice that, while painful, was necessary to reclaim my identity and rebuild my future. I informed her of my decision with a heavy heart but unwavering clarity. I would no longer allow her actions to dictate my self-worth or the future of our son's dreams. The conversation was terse and final, marked by a silence that spoke volumes. In that moment, I felt an indescribable mix of sorrow and liberation. A part of me mourned the loss of what had been, while another part celebrated the promise of what could be. I turned my focus to healing and growth. Every day, I created small rituals that reinforced my commitment to moving forward. I began each morning with a quiet meditation on my balcony, watching the sun break through the lingering chill of night, a daily reminder that every ending is followed by a new beginning. I set aside time for long walks, where I could lose myself in the rhythm of the city and the simple, unadorned beauty of nature. In these solitary moments, I rediscovered the quiet strength within me, the resolve that had been smoldering beneath the ashes of betrayal. I wrote poetry and letters to myself, affirmations of my own worth and a promise to my son that I would fight for a better future, one where his dreams were secure, and my spirit was unbreakable. As spring blossomed, my renewed sense of purpose began to manifest in tangible ways. I secured a modest, yet cozy, apartment in a safe neighborhood, a place that symbolized the new life I was determined to build. I re-established a disciplined financial plan, putting aside a portion of my earnings into a new fund for my son's education, no matter how modest it might be at first. Every small deposit was a victory, a tangible sign that I was taking control of our future, even when the odds were stacked against me. At work, my efforts began to bear fruit. My colleagues, who had once seen me as just another cog in a system overshadowed by my father's legacy, now recognized the brilliance of my ideas and the passion with which I led projects. I started spearheading initiatives that modernized our processes, using innovative technology to streamline operations and boost efficiency. Every successful project was a declaration, a statement that I was more than the sum of my past failures, that I was a force to be reckoned with. My professional achievements, though not grand enough to erase the scars of betrayal, were a quiet testament to my ability to transform pain into progress. In those pivotal moments, as I sat in the glow of my office late into the night, I began to understand that true vindication wasn't about exacting revenge or proving someone wrong, it was about reclaiming my own narrative. I realized that my journey was not defined by the hurtful words that had once reduced me to nothing, but by the resilience I had built in the face of unimaginable loss. I was no longer the man who had been told he was worthless. I was a survivor, a creator of my own destiny, and a loving father determined to secure a future for my son against all odds. One crisp afternoon, I met with a trusted mentor, an old friend who had always believed in my potential even when my world was crumbling. We sat in a quiet corner of a sunlit cafe, sipping on rich, aromatic coffee as he looked at me with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "You've taken the hardest blows life can throw," he said quietly, "and yet here you are, still standing, still fighting. Remember, every scar tells a story of survival. Use them not as reminders of defeat, but as proof that you can overcome anything." His words, simple and sincere, resonated deeply within me, fortifying my resolve to build a future defined by strength and authenticity. In the following months, I began to see the first signs of transformation. The small financial fund I had started for my son began to grow, slowly but steadily, and with every increment, I felt a renewed sense of hope. I continued to build my career, taking on new challenges and embracing opportunities that allowed me to innovate and lead. I reconnected with old friends, forged new relationships, and gradually mended the broken pieces of my life with careful, deliberate acts of self-care. I attended community events, spoke at support groups, and even shared my story online, where the echoes of my journey reached others who had faced similar betrayals. Their messages of encouragement were like beacons in the dark, reminding me that I was not alone, and that my story, as painful as it was, had the power to inspire healing and change. The most profound shift, however, was in my heart. I began to understand that the true measure of my worth was not dictated by the dismissive words of my ex-wife, nor by the rejection of my family. It was defined by the love I had for my son, the determination with which I fought for our future, and the quiet, unyielding resilience that had carried me through the darkest nights. I learned to forgive, not for the sake of those who had hurt me, but to liberate myself from the chains of lingering bitterness. Forgiveness, I discovered, was not a sign of weakness, but a courageous act of self-liberation that allowed me to move forward unburdened by the weight of past injustices. Standing now at the threshold of a new dawn, I feel a deep, unshakable certainty. I am the author of my own destiny. I have transformed heartbreak into a roadmap for resilience, using every setback as a stepping stone toward a brighter, more authentic future. My son's memory, though a source of everlasting pain, has also become the driving force behind my every decision, a reminder that love, when it is true and unconditional, can light even the darkest path. With every new day, I am committed to rebuilding not just our finances or my career, but my very identity. I will honor the sacrifice of my past by creating a future where my worth is defined by my own achievements and the deep, abiding love I share with my child. I am determined to live a life that is a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a life where even the most devastating betrayals are transformed into the fuel for a triumphant comeback. As I move forward, I carry with me the lessons of pain and the quiet power of forgiveness. I have learned that every scar is a symbol of survival, a reminder that I have faced the harshest of storms and emerged stronger, wiser, and more resolute. My journey is far from over. There will be more challenges ahead, more nights when the ghosts of betrayal threaten to steal my peace. But I now know that my future is mine to shape, a future built on the unyielding belief that I am worthy of love, respect, and every dream I dare to pursue. Today, I look back on this arduous path with a bittersweet sense of gratitude. I see the moments of despair, the long nights of questioning, and the relentless battles fought in silence, and I recognize that each one has contributed to the man I have become. I am no longer defined by the cruel words of my ex-wife or the callous rejection of a family that failed to see my worth. Instead, I stand tall, fortified by my experiences, driven by my vision, and empowered by the unwavering love I have for my child. This is not the end of my story, but a new beginning, a fresh chapter where I will continue to rise, to rebuild, and to inspire others with my journey. I will honor the memory of my son by ensuring that his future is bright, that his dreams are nurtured, and that my own worth is recognized through the legacy of resilience and hope I leave behind. Every step I take from here on out is a testament to the power of transformation, a declaration that I refuse to be defined by anyone else's narrow vision of my value. As the sun rises on a new day, I embrace the promise of tomorrow with a heart that has learned to love, a mind that has learned to forgive, and a spirit that is unbreakable. I have turned my pain into purpose and my sorrow into the foundation of a future that is wholly, unapologetically mine. And though the road ahead remains uncertain, I will face it with courage, conviction, and the relentless belief that every setback is simply the beginning of a comeback, a chance to forge a legacy that shines brighter than the darkness of my past.